Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first in the series of community conserved areas in South Asia. It's been organized by the ICCA South Asia Regional Coordination Committee. And this is the start of a series, and we hope to have this once every 2 weeks. And we are essentially going to start doing this ecosystem wise. So the first webinar is around the issues of wetlands and what has been happening with communities in wetland areas. And without much further ado, I'm going to let Nima take over, who is the regional coordinator of South Asia ICCA Consortium. And she's going to tell us what CCAs are and what ICCA is. Nima?
Yeah, Shruti, can you please allow me share screen sharing?
Yes. Just before that, a few guidelines for people. Requesting everyone to mute yourself when the speaker is presenting. And if you have any question, please put it in the chat box, and we will make sure that whatever you have asked will be covered in the Q&A session. And this is going to be recorded and will be put up in YouTube for larger dissemination. So if anyone you know who was unable to attend this webinar, you can share the link once we put it up on YouTube. And for any query and suggestion, you can please write to iccasouthasia@gmail.com. I will put all of these instructions up in the chat box as well. And over to Nima. Just.
Thank you, Shruti. Could you please enable my screen share?
Yes. Can you share your screen now?
Yes. Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Nima. As Shruti just introduced, I am a member of IPBES based in Pune. Also part of the team that coordinates the activities of ICCA Consortium that we will be talking about later on in the presentation for South Asia region. So a very warm welcome to all of you, and thank you very much for joining us this evening. We thought before we actually go into the webinar, our first talk for today, we should give a little bit of a context as to what we are talking about and why we are talking about it. So I will just very quickly, hello?
Anima, we can.
You can hear and you can see my screen because I can't see the Zoom anymore, it's disappeared. Okay. So just to give a very quick context, last year in 2019, IPBES or Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services came up with a report which actually should have created greater panic than COVID-19 did in 2020. But for some reason, the report got missed, did not get as much notice as it should have got. So what were the alarming facts in this report which should have created the panic? So the report very clearly said, which was very alarming, that 1 million species currently stand threatened with extinction. Over 40% of these are amphibian species, 33% coral, 30% marine mammals. Over 680 vertebrate species have gone extinct since the 16th century. And over 9% of domestic breeds of mammals used for food and agriculture has gone already extinct, and 1,000 more breeds are threatened. 33% of the land environment and 66% of the marine environment is significantly altered by humans. And obviously, this is going to have severe and drastic impacts on humans themselves. So we already see loss of pollinating species have put on risk annual global crop production worth about $577 billion. 100 to 300 million people at risk of floods and hurricanes because of loss of coastal habitats, and 93% fish harvest that we get now are at completely unsustainable levels, threatening the livelihoods of millions of people dependent on fisheries. So one wonders what has been happening, because there are conventional methods of conservation that we are all aware about, and we all know that protected areas, many of us know that protected areas like national parks, wildlife sanctuaries are actually created for conservation of biodiversity. So why are we where we are today? So if we look at South Asia region very quickly, we have over 800 protected areas in India covering 5% of our geographical area. Nepal has over 30 PAs, 33% geographic area, Bangladesh over 30 PAs, 1%, Pakistan over 200 PAs covering 10% of the geographical area. But the conventional approach to conservation has been such that most of these protected areas are under very strict control of the government agencies, mostly the forest departments in most South Asian countries. And the conservation policies under which these areas are created do not allow for management rights, use and access rights of the local communities, creating immense hardships for people who depend on ecosystems, these ecosystems, for economic, ecological, or cultural reasons. So this has created in South Asian region an extreme situation of conflict called conservation conflicts because of lack of access to these resources, rights being curtailed and annihilated, traditional knowledge used in management and governance, but people are not, whose knowledge it is, are not acknowledged, or they are not given rights or to the resources. Huge loss of livelihoods for millions, and consequently, these people often are driven to destructive resource use, support to poaching and timber theft out of sheer desperation. There has also been a relationship of distrust that has got created between the management authorities and local people. So local people, who should be the greatest allies of conservation because of a number of reasons, are currently most dreaded opponents of protected area system in most countries. One of the impacts has also been that indigenous systems of conservation that many of these communities have been practicing have been completely ignored in this conventional method. And local people often have no rights to protect their surroundings from external threats of the kind that we will be talking about in this presentation. This also comes at a very huge cost to most people, cost of human rights violations, evictions, actual physical threat, crop damage, houses being destroyed. In most South Asia region is full of stories. Almost every day there are stories of this kind coming out in the papers. While this is happening, on the one hand, in this small percentage of land that we just spoke about, on the other hand, the model of development that South Asian countries have adopted, a very high consumption-based model, has sort of unleashed a destruction of demon in the rest of the landscape. So we see, I have figures only for India, unfortunately, but we see more than 14 lakh hectares of forest diverted in last over 30 years for various development projects. Currently, it is at the rate of 25,000 hectares per year in India. Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
Nima.
we can hear you.
Okay. Almost all major rivers with multiple dams, and unfortunately this kind of rampant destruction is not just seen in areas outside of PAs, but increasingly even inside the PAs, around the PAs, and some of the most critical wildlife corridors are also being opened up for development projects. And this has been happening in India, as we see during the COVID lockdown time too. I cannot move the slide, Shruti.
How about you try now?
No. Okay. So we see that there has been a debate in South Asia about conservation versus development. So it has become like a battle of competing needs and aspirations and supremacy of the powerful. And more importantly, there seems to be like a clash of competing worldviews, like one worldview where humans are very much part of nature, whereas other worldview which sees human development versus wildlife conservation. So this dualistic Western worldview seeing humans separate from nature and hence separate from areas for human development and areas for wildlife or biodiversity conservation have to be separate. So the question is that, okay, this is one conventional approach, but does it really work? Maybe in the short run, because we do see increase and revival of wildlife population, habitats, regeneration. But another shocking report that we must pay attention to is a United Nations Environment Program of 2012, which brings about very interesting fact, which says that while globally protected area coverage has gone up to about 13% of the world, biodiversity at all levels has gone down. Which means population, species, ecosystem, and genetic levels, all levels. And 50% of the sites identified as critically important for some endangered species, and 49% of important bird areas are still outside of the protected area where all the destruction is currently happening. So if we look at a slightly different data, despite whatever we just spoke about, South Asia is also a region of some of the world's highest population densities. In fact, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India are among the top 5 most dense countries in the world. Yet we continue to host 5 global biodiversity hotspots. And we continue to be among very rich countries in species and ecosystem diversity. So why is this happening? So if we look at this and we combine it with another report that the World Bank came out with, which says that currently globally, 22% area is under the control of indigenous communities. And this 22% actually holds 80% of the world's biodiversity. So we see that what is happening in South Asia, because South Asia is still culturally very rich, and most of these cultures see humans very much part of nature, coexistence with other species, spirits in the nature are very much part of those cultures, conservation being a way of life, interlinked with economic, cultural, political, and spiritual practices and not separate from it. This has been recognized by the IPBES, which produced this really alarming report, which says very categorically that the fact that indigenous people and local communities have not been involved in conservation and planning processes is one of the reasons why biodiversity is at the level that it is at. And it says that indigenous peoples and local communities, their knowledge and understanding of large regions and ecosystems and their desired future development pathways must become part of development plan for the world. So that brings us to understand that biodiversity conservation needs a shift in perspective and approach. So if we say a shift, what is the shift that we are talking about? And this brings us to indigenous peoples and local communities conserved areas, or what are increasingly being called globally as territories of life. So since most of these areas that we will be talking about today and in times to come are not legally recognized as conserved areas or community conserved areas or ICCAs, how do we define them? How do we identify them? So there are 3 globally now, including Convention on Diversity. There are 3 characteristics that have been identified to identify ICCAs. One is that the community is the main decision maker. They are very close to this ecosystem, these territories, and they are the main decision makers, even if they are not legally empowered to do so. The second is that they have their own systems, rules, and regulations in place. Even if the objective of these systems, rules, and regulation, the primary objective is not conservation, the effort should be leading towards conservation. So this is an outcome-based approach to conservation and not identification-based approach or objective-based approach to conservation. So when we look at South Asia continues to be very, very rich in such examples, highly threatened, as we will see later, but extremely rich in terms of still having sacred rivers, sacred fish populations, ponds, sacred forests, so a very strong sacred sentiments associated with large or small landscapes. or traditional and cultural association with different species, like these migrating birds. You can see some of the examples on these slides. I will not be talking too much in detail because most of these examples will be coming up in this webinar over a period of time. Or continuing to follow systems of agriculture, such the traditional systems of agriculture, which still protect a huge diversity of seeds and other forms of crop diversity. We have many examples of wetland conservation by communities within the region. We have examples where the forests have been restored by these communities from almost being degraded to forests which are being protected by them from generations. We also have many examples, particularly in India, where it's people's movements and resistance which is actually keeping many habitats safe from destruction of mining or other development projects. So these communities are struggling to protect their traditional or sacred landscapes. As I said, these communities, these examples exist through the region, through different countries, but are extremely threatened in today's time, mainly because of unclear and unrecognized legal status. They are not recognized as conservation sites, and neither do people have their rights, access and use rights to these areas in most cases. Lack of information about them and lack of visibility and recognition of their significance for conservation of biocultural diversity, not just biological, but biocultural diversity. It's from development projects like mining, dams, industrialization, urbanization, pollution, solar power plants, you name it. Changing local aspirations and inadequate livelihood options to match those aspirations in changing times. Internal community inequalities and interference from party politics and other factors, cultural and aspirational changes. There are many, many more. This is just a very quick list. So in 2010, realizing that these immense examples, not just in India, not just in South Asia, but across the globe, they continue to be highly threatened, but they have a huge potential to present an alternative approach to conservation, biocultural conservation, and perhaps the only pathway which can show a direction to humanity right now. Some of the actors, organizations, community representatives, indigenous peoples got together and constituted a consortium, a global consortium, which is a membership-based alliance. And their main objective is to work towards recognition and support to ICCAs globally. And in last decade of their formal existence, they have managed to have many international gains, at least because in conventions like international conservation commitments that countries has, like Convention on Biological Diversity and many others, the term ICCAs and local communities, indigenous peoples, has very centrally been included. And these conventions have many decisions which talk about inclusion of local communities in protected area management as well as recognition of ICCAs. So ICCA Consortium supports its members and other ICCAs in a number of ways. Three main areas of focus that it has. One is through documentation and mapping of ICCAs to provide the visibility. Second is empowering and defending ICCAs through legal and policy support when they are going through threats or any sort of danger. Enriching CCAs, which is providing support for ecological restoration, governance and management planning, livelihood enhancement, self-strengthening processes, self-reflection processes, capacity building, community exchanges, etc. So they have members all across the globe. And recently in 2019, the members who are based in South Asia region got together and they realized about ICCAs, bringing visibility, bringing recognition to ICCAs is extremely important in these times, even more so than ever before. With that intention, the group decided to form a kind of coalition in South Asia region and decided to work, although independently, these members have been working on ICCA issues for many years already, but now they have decided to put a collective energy, form a collective and work towards outreach, networking, documentation, mapping, knowledge generation, livelihood support, etc. Whatever would be the need for ICCAs to be recognized, to expand, to be vibrant. Two of the main activities that we have just started with, others we are still discussing, include a kind of development of an integrated map-based web platform to document ICCAs in South Asia, where communities and organizations can share, exchange, validate, and publish information on their ICCAs. This web portal is not online yet. What is online is a map, as you see here, which is on the Kalpavriksh website. Website is given here that you can all have a look at. If any of you is interested in becoming part of this or know of ICCAs which will be interested in part of becoming this movement, this collective, please write to us at the email address given here. Or if you have suggestions on other ICCAs who could be called for webinars of this kind, please do write to us. The other thing that we have launched is this webinar series, where we will be presenting examples from all the different South Asian countries, as Shruti said in the introduction, covering all different ecosystems, grasslands, wetlands, forest, marine ecosystems in the coming weeks and months. The objective again for this webinar is to create awareness about ICCAs in the region, but also not just create awareness, but create a community which will start a debate and dialogue towards an alternative and inclusive approach to biodiversity conservation in this region. So I would not take up much of your time. I would pass on to Salam to please speak about Loktak in the first of our talks today. Thank you very much, and thank you again for joining us this evening.
Hello, good evening, everybody. I'm Salam Rajesh from Imphal, Manipur, and I'm taking you through a short visual journey in Manipur, talking about Loktak Lake, one of the biggest freshwater lake in Northeast India. So in my presentation, I'm just showing about 13 slides, and I'm trying to tell you stories about Loktak that we have been associated for around 23 years. And in just about 13 slides, I hope to do justice. So Loktak Lake, in Manipuri, we call lake as Pat. So in the vernacular, we say Loktak Pat. So Pat in the vernacular stands for, commonly it stands for lakes, wetlands, peatlands, marshy lands, it covers everything. So Loktak, as you can see in this slide, according to the Loktak Development Authority information, length is around 26 kilometers, width is 13 kilometers, equal to 338 square kilometers. But here I would like to say something that in this past few years, there has been some controversy on the actual physical this overlay of the lake. In 1979-1980, it was reported that this water surface of the lake is around 289 square kilometers. But in 2017, Loktak Development Authority revised its data, and they said that now the water surface of Loktak is around just 236.5 square kilometers. So basically, at that information, we can say that around 53 square kilometers of the lake has suddenly disappeared. That I've also, in the slide, you can see on the right-hand corner, physical outlet of the lake. And Loktak is, for administrative reason, Loktak is divided into 3 sections: northern section, central zone, and the southern zone. Southern zone, basically, it covers this Kabilanjong National Park. It's under the jurisdiction of the Forest Department, Manipur. So it's in the central zone where the water body is there. And just as I was talking, we are now just finding that 53 square kilometers of lake has disappeared. And And the fill, when you visit a fill and doing fill verification, my assumption is that this portion of the lake which we are seeing in the map, northern zone, this is the portion which has now disappeared in fill. In the map you see the northern zone, but in fill you find that this northern zone has been reclaimed for agriculture, for fish farm, for brick fields, for different commercial activities, for settlements. That is the situation right now. In the imagery, the NASA satellite imagery, you can see lake, the aerial view of the lake. And the green dots you are seeing in this floating biomass, which we locally call as phumdi. This is a collection of different aquatic, semi-aquatic, semi-terrestrial vegetation growing in collection. And later in the slide, I'll show you how the local people are utilizing this biomass for the fishing, fish culture, for their living. So next slide. Next slide. Here in just one slide, I'm trying to sum up something. What is the lifestyle of the local people living within the lake? Within the lake, we have a village called Champu Khangpok. This actually, before IPBES, before the Loktak Hydro Power Project came in the pre-IPBES period, that is before 1980s. This area was, this village was on a spur. You can say a spur, a plot of land which is a little raised above the water level. So they used to come down in the lean season for fishing and all. So after the Loktak project came in, and after this IPBES was commissioned, it was commissioned in January 1983. So after the IPBES was commissioned, entire lake became a vast artificial water reservoir. So suddenly everything went down underwater. This raised land also came underwater, and suddenly the village became from a something like a village on the land, suddenly became a floating village. So in the upper slide, right-hand slide, you see how the fishers are living today. They have built small huts constructed of bamboo and thatch, and these huts are constructed on this floating biomass. So you see the bamboo poles. This act as anchor, because when, especially in this season, in June, July, when we have very strong winds, this floating huts will be blown from one end of the lake to the other. So the fishermen have to anchor these floating huts with these bamboo poles. And the slides below, you can see how the villagers are living among the phumdis, among the weeds and all. And basically the only mode of transportation is this traditional dugout canoe. So, and in the last slide, on the bottom of the slide, the picture, you see fishermen community practicing this traditional form of fishery called atafum. It's basically the fishermen bring in this floating biomass, and they in a circle. The floating biomass is cut into strips, and it's formed into a circle. And they provide fish feeds inside the circle. So below it's hollow, nothing is there. So when they sense that fish are collecting inside the water body, they drop nets all around the circle. And it takes about 20-30 people to drag up the nets. It's the traditional, traditional and the main source of fish culture that brings the most revenue. And unfortunately, when they are having conflict with Loktak Development Authority and with the state government is saying that this form of fish culture has to stop. And under the provision of the Manipur Loktak Protection Act 2006, the government has banned this form of fish culture. But we are saying that this form of fishery is the main source of earning money through fish catching. Like they use Chinese deep nets, but that is only for catching small fish. For the bigger fish, they use this traditional form of fishery. So if government says stop with this form of fishery, then the main source of livelihood is cut off. So the conflict is still there. So we are saying that you just cannot say stop. Next slide, please. Next slide. So like I was saying, Loktak and the adjoining wetlands, the main source of livelihood is fish. Everything revolves about fish. Earlier slide, please. Yeah. So you see all sort of fish, small, big, and on the upper left, right-hand side, you see these are the carps, common carps, and all the civil carps. I like to put in 1 or 2 sentences on this. Why we are seeing carps? These are introduced species. In those days when pre-IPBES days, we have this species of fish that migrate upstream from Chinwin Irrawaddy in Western Burma. So they come up to Loktak and adjoining wetlands like Ikko, Waito and all, and they breed. So when these migratory fishes come up, local people both in Loktak Lake, adjoining wetlands, and those who live along the Manipur River and all, they catch these fish, and this is the main, and that was the main source of earning food for money and for their livelihoods and all. But after the IPBES came up and this migratory passage was blocked, so suddenly there was decrease in fish population in Loktak. And then Manipur government through the fisheries department, they started introducing these carps, common carp, silver carp, grass carp. These are all introduced species. But some of the fishes you are seeing on the slides below, photographs below, these are the common local species still found. So many of the indigenous fish species that was earlier found in Loktak and adjoining wetlands have practically disappeared in field. Some of the species we are seeing that they have become extinct in wild in Loktak and adjoining areas. Next slide, please. So Loktak is a Ramsar site. Ramsar, its main criteria is migratory water birds. And Loktak comes under the Central Asian flyway. So we have many species of birds, water birds, migratory water birds coming to Loktak every winter. In 1997, when we did bird census, there were around 27 species. But due to the Loktak hydroelectric power project, there's been a lot of changes in the ecosystem of the lake. So many of the bird species like Cirrus crane, wooded pink-headed duck and all, they have stopped coming to Loktak. And some of the species have become extinct in wild in Loktak and the adjoining areas. So we have birds coming in, but their population keeps fluctuating. Sometimes there are quite a huge number of birds coming. Next year, less of the numbers are coming. In 1997, when we did bird census, there were around more than 20,000 birds population coming in. And another year, we found that less than 10,000. So it keeps fluctuation. We feel that it's because of the perpetual high level of the lake, is water level maintained for the hydro project has totally disturbed the feeding ground of the birds. And talking about the aquatic vegetation also, we find that a lot of food species, aquatic plants and semi-terrestrial plants that were used as food by the local people and now practically disappeared from Loktak and the adjoining wetlands. And some of the plants, some of these plants which are going extinct in wild in Loktak, now the fishermen community in Loktak are trying to reintroduce again. Like Durable Ferox, this is one of the most common and popular food eaten by local people. So in the last 2-3 years, local fishers in this Champu Khangpok floating village, they are trying to reintroduce this aquatic plant. So next slide. And this is one just simple slide that I'm trying to show you, but behind this slide is a long story of conflict for the last. For me, I have associated with Loktak people almost 23 years from now, and in this last 23 years, conflicts are going on, never-ending series of conflict. The conflict here you are seeing in my slide is what happened in November 2011 when the Loktak Development Authority, taking cognizance of this Manipur Loktak Protection Act of 2006, suddenly said that the fishermen community living inside Loktak and in the periphery of the Loktak, they were the main cause of pollution in the lake. So they gave this reason and they started evicting the fisher people. But as you can see in the slide, if you look closely, you see a lot of women in the activity. So fishermen, particularly the women, came out very strongly and protested that Loktak as a whole for hundreds of years, they have been living in the lake, they have been associated with the lake, its ecosystem. Lake is a part of their life. And so you just cannot ask us to go out from the lake. Their only source of activity is fishing, and the main source of livelihood is from fishing. So if you are asking us to go out from the lake, we'll die. We don't have agricultural land, we don't do wet rice cultivation, so we cannot go anywhere. So as you see in this slide, women came out and they said that either we'll die or say it was something like a do or die. They said that we'll not go out from the lake, we'll die here. You do whatever you can, we'll also fight back. So the women fought back very strongly, and because of this women resistance, from 2011 till today, 2020, government of Manipur has not been able to push in the agenda of evicting the fishing community from the lake. Next slide, please. A part of the conflict happening, what we felt that we sat down with the fishing community and we said that the conflict is there, okay, but as a community living and associated with Loktak as a part of our life, we have to do something for the lake. Manipur government of Manipur has a lot of schemes for clearing phumdis and all other sort of things for the Loktak, but there less of happening in field. We don't see much of development activity happening in field. So we organized the fishermen and we said that we'll not ask the government of Manipur to come and save Loktak. We'll organize ourselves to save Loktak, conserve the migratory water bird, try to reintroduce, rejuvenate the vegetation, aquatic, semi-aquatic, semi-terrestrial vegetation that are disappearing and all. So from 2012, in 2011, we organized the fishermen community and we formed this All Loktak Lake Fishermen's Union Manipur. So since then, it was something like a two-pronged strategy. One was to bring together the fishing community to fight back what the government is trying to do. And second thing was to bring together community together to do something to create awareness, capacity building for conservation of Loktak. So since 2012, so every year, on every occasion, World Wetlands Day, International Rivers Day, World Earth Day, so then International Biodiversity Day. So every occasion we have organized events to commemorate this international days. Then we, this union started moving around. We started approaching different villages that were located all around the Loktak Lake. So we started talking to other people also that we have to collectively come together to save, conserve, protect Loktak Lake. So because it's providing us our food, our livelihoods. So because it's part of our life, we have to start different activities to protect, conserve Loktak. So in the slides, you're seeing different, the slide on the right-hand side, you see people gathered for a meeting and all. And initially when we started this community meetings and all, there were very little response. In one meeting when we organized, and I was supposed to speak on an island called Thanga, we requested everyone to come for the community meeting, and only about 15 to 20 people turned up. They were not interested. But after each year, we organized all this awareness campaign. Then we were talking about, simultaneously, we were talking about this conflict on one hand. Then we were talking about need for conservation. So now today, when we organize these rallies and meetings, we have hundreds of people coming out. So it's one of, you can say it's something not a 100% success, but we are feeling that we are achieving something in field because communities are coming on and responding now. Next slide. This is also showing some of our activities through the years. Every year we are observing all these days, World Wetland Day, International Rivers Day, so that we can bring in more of the local people into our fold, make them aware of what is happening. We are talking about Loktak hydroelectric project. We are talking about Itai Baras. We are talking about the disappearing migratory fishes that provided us food and money. Then we are talking about the disappearing plants that we used to eat, and that which many of which we are not seeing now anymore. So we are talking of very different things. We are talking of how the migratory water birds are related to the fish, to the lake's ecosystem, and why it's important to protect these birds, because they are also part of the lake system, and we need to protect them, conserve them. So we are having a series of discussions at the grassroots levels. And see on the left-hand side of the slide, it's very interesting that people are sitting, we are all sitting on the floating biomass. It's not on the floor and something like that. Underneath it's all water. So it's a meeting organized on floating biomass. Next slide, please. In this slide, I'm trying to show that other than awareness programs and capacity programs inside the lake and in the periphery of the lake, we have started coming out of the lake area, and we are trying to tell people in Imphal and other places that these are the problems being faced by the fishers in the Loktak areas. And we basically, what we are asking people outside of the lake areas that we need your support, we need your cooperation to address both issues, conflict that are happening in the lake, then the issue of conservation of the lake, restoring its past ecosystem, bringing back the plant species, then protecting the water birds. So we are talking a lot of things, and we have started going out from the lake area. The slide you are seeing on the left-hand top corner is in Imphal. So we have asked the women from the lake to speak about their issues. Next slide, please. So in this slide, I'm trying to show that this discussion are at different levels. On the top left side, left hand, you see that we are having the meeting at the community level inside Loktak. Then below that, we are showing that I'm showing that we are having discussion with different civil society organizations in different areas in Bishnupur district, in Imphal. So we are trying to rope in all civil society organizations based in Imphal to support the fishing community. Then on the right-hand side top, you see we are having the discussion at Manipur University. We are targeting the people at the university, different faculties, economics, political science, whoever is interested in issues of Loktak. We are trying to garner in the support of the academics, because we need their support. Those who are doing research, their PhDs and teaching faculties. And very fortunately for us, we are having a lot of support from the faculty in the Manipur University. And some of these professors in Manipur University happen to be in government committees, in high-level committees. So many of the professors are speaking out on our behalf in government level meetings. And on the slide right-hand side, you can see we are having discussion with representatives of political parties. In this particular meeting, we will have discussing with representatives of Indian National Congress. They were, what was the problem with Loktak, and we have been trying to talk to them, to convince them to seek the support. Next slide, please. So I won't be taking much of the time now. I'm just coming up to what is happening now. Pandemic is there, lockdown is there, and problem with the fishing community is that they are located inside the lake. And this small community of fishing people, they are having a lot of problem coming out of the lake. Many of the localities all around the periphery of the lake have blocked their lanes, and they are asking this fishing community not to come out. So fishing community, this lockdown started from last week of March. So April and May, they didn't get any relief from the state administration. So they started appealing to people at large, to the civil society organization, to provide them relief, because they are now suffering. They are having shortage of rice, pulses, cooking oil, and even salt. So we made general appeal, and some individuals. Here in the picture you are seeing this All Manipur Student Union. They came out to provide relief to the fishing community. Next slide, please. In coping with the pandemic, and since this fishing community can come out of the lake, other than the trouble they are facing, problems they are facing, so in this slide we are showing how some of us going there, meeting them and discussing on how to cope with this pandemic. And one of the things they're trying to do is, since they cannot bring out their fish and sell in local markets, they sun dry this fish for fermentation, then they smoke this fish for storage. If you're smoking the fish, you can keep it for a few weeks without spoiling the fish. So that is one option they're trying to do now. And another thing is that since they cannot also come out from the lake area, and since we are talking about conservation of the lake, as a part of that effort, we are trying to clear up passages that are blocked by these floating weeds and all. So actually, clearing of phumdi was supposed to be done by the Loktak Development Authority. They had used some of money sanctioned from the central government, and all, but we don't find them working in the ground. So fishermen community are not waiting for the government to come in. We have said that we'll contribute our lot, and as a contribution in our activity of conservation of the lake, we are trying to control this. Some of the weeds you are seeing are all invasive species like paragrass and all. So we are trying to clear up passageways blocked by the this expanding invasive species. So it's something what little they can do to contribute. So next slide. I think I've almost come to the end of the presentation. So that's in a brief, I'm trying to tell a lot of stories about Loktak, conflict, conservation, and how people are coping with the pandemic and all. And actually, today also, I just returned from the lake area. They're having a lot of shortage on foods, and we requested a lot of people and some of the civil society organization, and our deputy chief minister donated some rice, pulses, cooking oil, and salt. And I went today to the lake to deliver the relief materials. So that's it, and I hope to add in more when discussions come in. Thank you.
Thank you, Salamji, for that lovely presentation. It is indeed very important, based on this experience sharing, that we realize why it's important to include communities when we talk about conservation. Without taking much of your time, we also have Manish Ji, who is from Bandara Nisarga Sanskriti Mandal, who is going to talk about the status of wetland conservation in India. Manish Ji, over to you.
Thank you, Shruti. Just as we have seen the presentation of Salam and about the Loktak Lake, in India, basically the wetlands are categorized in 4 groups. Those are Himalayan wetlands, Indo-Gangetic wetlands, coastal wetlands, and Deccan wetlands. And as India is also one of the party to the Ramsar Convention, it came up with the wetland management rules recently in 2017, and it also states that about 4.63% of the total geographic area of our country is made up of wetlands. And according to these guidelines, the central government has also issued a notification for states to frame the wetland management rules in their respective states. But it also did one thing. According to Ramsar Convention, the definition of wetland was not differentiating between man-made wetlands and natural wetlands, but government of India has done this differentiation, and they have delineated the man-made wetland used for irrigation, fishing, or salt production in our country. And further to this, though government has done this, according to Deepa and Ramchandra of Indian Institute of Bangalore, they still states that about 20% of the known range of biodiversity in our country is supported by wetlands. So wetlands are in a way very important in respect of biodiversity, but it also is very, very important in respect to the communities who are dependent on it and living around it, and resources the wetlands are providing to the communities. It is a very age-old practice. Wetland conservation is not uh, the new thing to the communities in our country, and communities are dependent for livelihood on them. Then community-led management practices are also there in Himalayan regions, deserts, Gangetic Plains, Deccan Peninsula also. Uh, as we have seen the uh, case of Loktak Lake, similarly there is Wular Lake, then lakes in Bhandara and Gondia in Maharashtra. Then some of the communities have got the rights over their wetlands through the use of Forest Right Act in Gadchiroli and Amravati districts of Maharashtra. Then some cities are also reviving their lakes and restoring biodiversity in the city like Bangalore and Delhi also. And some of the government departments, uh, forest department, wildlife department, and social forestry department also are they are also contributing in conservation of wetlands in some of the areas. The uh, wetland conservation rules in 2017, they have provided these legal provisions for conservation. Before that, community has their have their own systems. Then Biological Diversity Act also provides some avenues for the conservation and uh, restoration of lakes and community rights on the wetlands. Then Forest Right Act also provide some opportunities. Currently, there are about 39 Ramsar sites in India, and according to the Ramsar Convention, only the conservation of biological diversity is not important, but there is also another idea of wise use of wetlands and economic valuation of wetlands that is also promoted by Ramsar, which is not the part of the wetland management rules that our government has provided. But still the basic focus of wetland conservation is uh, not going in hand with the community, and it only promotes the oh, sorry, was I muted? Okay, so I was saying that the Ramsar Convention not only provides the legal tool for conservation, it also promotes the idea of wise use of wetlands and by the community dependent on it, and it also promotes the idea of economic valuation of wetlands to give more focus on ecological services and goods that are provided by the wetlands to the community and overall environment in our surroundings. Thank you. Thank you, Shruti.
Uh, Thank you, Manish ji, for that brief, detailed but brief intro to the wetland conservation. We also have Purnima ji from Khoj, who is going to talk about the FRA implementation in wetland from her experiences. Purnima ji?
Yeah, thanks, Shruti. So we've almost for last 8 to 10 years with the enactment of the Forest Rights Act and also the provisions of the Panchayat's extension to Scheduled Areas Act for the scheduled areas in the country. There have been two wonderful provisions that give communities the opportunity to manage their water bodies. And using these provisions, we were able to fight and bring around 200 water bodies in the Melghat region of Amravati district in Maharashtra under community control. As a result of which, the entire management of the water body, the desilting part of it, the species that people use for fishing, all this is now being under the control of the communities, and communities have been playing a major role in terms of managing their water bodies, which was earlier managed by various departments of the government, be it fisheries or be it the irrigation department. As a result of which, two things have happened. One is that the community who has lost their land for the development of the water bodies, they got a say in the management of these water bodies. Secondly, also was the whole economical and ecological aspect of managing these water bodies. So, for instance, when the government undertakes a desilting program, the entire silt is removed using a machine, or even manually when it is removed, it does not take into consideration the fact that the top soil layer is one of the best ingredients, nutrient ingredient for fish. So the entire soil is removed. But now when communities are managing these water bodies, they take an effort to ensure that proper desilting measures are adopted by the community. So they, in fact, they manage the whole desilting processes in the villages, in these water bodies. And that has also given them some kind of economic income to the collective of the to the village collective and to people who go fishing in these water bodies. So broadly speaking, I think the whole struggle here in this region has been more or less a legal battle, where we were trying to establish and bring these water bodies out of control of the government and bringing it back to the communities. And there has been a lot of challenges. I mean, we had to go to the court and protect these rights, but somehow we've managed to sail through. And today the communities are managing these water bodies, adding great income. One is the income part of it, because these are indigenous communities or the Adivasi communities predominantly, who had lost their livelihoods because of the land submergence in the water bodies. And under FRA, where the forest area had submerged under the water body, since the status of the submerged area does not change and it continues to remain as forest, we also claimed rights over bigger water bodies. So a large water body of around 250 hectares, where people claim their rights. They also had to struggle, but eventually they also got rights over their water bodies, and currently they are undertaking fishing, and they are also trying to conserve some of the other species which are in the endangered list. That is a process that communities are now deciding to undertake. So when the whole management goes to the communities, it is not just the communities who are managing it for economical purposes. It is also the communities who can understand the ecological importance of the region in terms of what kind of plantations be undertaken in the surrounding areas, what kind of birds are coming into these areas, so what kind of trees we should plant on the periphery, what kind of fishes should we use in our water bodies, rather than trying to bring the commercial variety of fishes. So all these decisions are now being taken by the communities, and I think it's in the larger process, these areas, these steps by the communities are helpful. Although this is still a new thing that is happening here. And people are still managing it. Every year there is a new experience, people still face new challenges, and they're still going through it, because there's not a lot of economic income that is coming to them, but certainly there's some value addition. And some of the areas are also the areas which are non-tribal, non-indigenous communities, so where you also have other communities which are part of the village collective, and they too are participating in the whole areas. And the communities also,
sorry Purnima, people who are not speaking, can you please mute your microphone? Thank you.
So there are also communities which are non-indigenous but mix heterogeneous communities which are participating in this process. And it's basically the village collective. So village collective has both just the indigenous communities and also the heterogeneous communities, and they're all participating together. The way the village collective is managing is to try and ensure that people from the villages are able to derive maximum benefit. They are able to participate in all the management processes, from fishing to plantation activities around on the periphery of the areas to desilting activities. And that's how I think they have been able to exercise their rights under both the Forest Rights Act and under the Act of PESA. And these have been, I think, very good examples where where protecting our rights which have been lost due to creation of water bodies, but trying to at least compensate those by using the fishing rights, or using other, even small amount of tourism activities that some of the areas are now getting linked to, because these are also good birding areas. So how do we use this for small learning activities, not rather tourism activities, but small learning activities for school children, for village kids? These are also some of the thoughts where villages are now getting activated, and villages are participating in these kinds of management activities also. So I'll stop here. If there are any questions, we can take it further. Thank you.
Thank you, Purnima Sai, for that introduction and description. So with this, we come to the question answer segment of the webinar. And there's a lot of interesting questions that's come up. So we probably take it one by one, and the people who've asked it can switch on their mic and their video and ask the concerned person directly. So I can call upon those people who've asked those questions, and they can do that. So the first question is from Oji. He has two questions, two parts, one for Nima and one for Salamji. So if Ojit's on line, if he can directly ask.
I hope I'm audible to everyone. Hello.
Yes, you are.
Oh. Thank you so much for very insightful discussions. And yes, it has already been preempted to a great extent many of the worries and many of the questions that I had by listening all the three speakers. My first question was very simple, because I just want to know what are the actions and what are the programs that the state government is right now taking up. I said in 2011 November, there was a lot of fight and evacuation was incomplete, or it was stopped in between. And now I just want to know what is the present action that the government is doing. But as far as the pandemic is concerned and others, I really do not, and the kind of politics that is happening, many people will be least considerate. And I'm very worried about the misuse of the wetlands and the peoples out there. So my first question is, what are the programs or the action that the state government is right now taking up as regard to the fishes, as regard to the wetland? And the second to the speaker is the paddy fields in many literature, especially in Southeastern Asian countries, many of the rice fields or the paddy fields have been converted from once a very thriving wetlands. So with the kind of eutrophication, with the kind of human footprints in it, so I just want to know whether people who are depending on the Loktak Lake are thinking of converting certain parts into an agricultural or the paddy fields. That's my second question to the our speakers. And my other question is to Nima. Nima was giving the definitions of the CAA, but in many of the regions of the world where the term indigenous is very contesting, especially in the northeastern region where there are a lot of tribals and non-tribals peoples living together, it's very difficult to term a certain group of people as an indigenous, because the word indigenous also provides a certain kind of proprietorship right. So in those particular contexts, the definition of the CAA, do you think that it needs to be revisited, so that important landscapes that we find in the northeastern regions can be conserved and can be studied in the best of the ability? But the word indigenous is going to create a lot of issues there. So that's my second question. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you.
Salamji, do you want to go first?
Sorry, but couldn't hear very clearly what Ozit was saying, asking. Hello.
Rajesh, he has written also this question in the comment section in case you want to refer to those.
Actually, his audio was very low. So I wanna...
So, the questions are: what is and are the present precautions that the government of Manipur is taking up to take care of the locals who are depending upon the Loktak for livelihoods? Then he asked, paddy fields in many cases were once natural wetlands. Do you see that the fisher in the study site may gradually convert the part of the Loktak Lake, which is so richly supplied with biodiversity, besides being a Ramsar site, into an agricultural field? And the third question he said was, who are the group of people who are residing in the floating village? Do they belong to the same clan, or are they made up of people who have been fishers, having their ancestral homes in the nearby villages?
Yeah. Talking about the first question, I would say that it's controversial now. Controversial in the sense that according to the government of Manipur, they have classified the fishing community as firstly as occupier. They officially they use this term occupier. Then they upgrade this term to encroachers. So government of Manipur for the last 4 or 5 years has been saying that fishing community living and in the periphery of the Loktak are people who have encroached upon the wetland. We have countered this question because on the ground that, see, this fishing community who are living inside the lake and in the periphery of the lake, they have been living here for how long we don't know. 50 years, 100 years, they have been living here. And they have been using this, they have utilized the resources of the lake, fish, vegetation, whatever, for their living, for the food, for the livelihoods. And we regard this entire water body and peripheral areas of the Loktak as something like that indigenous territory of this fishing community. So we are telling the government that you cannot classify this fishing community as encroachers in your modern term. People have been there living in the lake area for so many years. They have not come just overnight and they have taken over the lake like that. So in one official government meeting, I asked the former environment minister, sir, if you are classifying this fishing community as occupier or encroacher, you must provide us the white paper, data on which you are referring these people as a group of people who have suddenly come into the lake and had occupied this floating biomass, or they have occupied land in the peripheral areas. So unless you give us the data, your official paper, then we cannot accept it. In our own terminology, we are saying that this is indigenous territory of the fishing community, and it is the right to access the lake and the right to use the resources of the lake. But that is one point of conflict that's still going on. And about the second question, what was that?
It was regarding the paddy fields.
That reclamation of the lake.
Yeah.
Like I was saying in the first portion of the slide, I was saying that there are 3 zones of the lake. Officially, there are 3 zones: northern zone, central zone, and southern zone. So about around 8 years back, Loktak Development Authority started constructing a causeway, which has now become a road that cuts across the lake from from western point of the lake to the eastern point of the lake, so that it provides transportation for from Bishnupur district to Imphal West district. And this roadway, in one way we are saying it's a causeway. It has cut off the northern portion of the lake. So the portion of the lake to the north of this road, this newly constructed road. So this portion has been, because the water flow has been blocked by this buildup by this road, and because there's no flow of the water, so all the floating biomass has started accumulating, and they have become rooted on the northern side of the road. And this northern portion of the lake has been reclaimed by local people from Imphal and many other places for agriculture, for fish farm, and for different commercial activities. Today also, when I was there, I saw people have started fencing the lake area. They were started filling in portion of the lake for either for settlement or for some commercial business purpose. So you can say that in our field study, we have seen that there's less percentage of local people who have reclaimed part of the lake. Many of the people who have come in are outsiders, people not from the lake area, but from different areas. That is the thing.
Nima, would you want to respond to the second part?
Yes, thank you very much. That is indeed a very important question, particularly for our region. So the ICCA consortium that we were talking about, in that the indigenous peoples from Latin America and North America in particular played a very important role to take these issues to international conventions. And for them, that identity of the indigeneity, or the identity of being called as indigenous people, was extremely important. So this term comes as ICCA consortium in the consortium, as also in many of the international agreements like the Convention on Biological Diversity. However, Convention on Biological Diversity recognizes both indigenous peoples and local communities as the terms as communities to identify the people who are involved in conservation. And for South Asia region in particular, this is a very important question, because many communities would have issues by using indigenous peoples because of the kind of issues that you mentioned, but also sometimes there are villages which are mixed communities of Adivasi and non-Adivasi groups. And also the government also does not recognize indigenous as a term. So for South Asian region in general, we always use the term community conserved areas, and in which the local community self-is itself. So yes, that's an important question, and for South Asia, calling a community conserved areas is very, very important. There may be different perspectives about it from friends from Nepal. If they do, they may want to intervene at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Nima. Requesting JP to ask the second question. If he is around.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for my question, like the Sir Rajesh have already answered a part of it, because it was the same question like Ojit sir. Well, first of all, like thanks for this webinar. It was a really interesting and insightful one. So I had a follow-up, and this question is for Rajesh sir. So when we talk about the lakeshore, like the floating village community, what are the measures that were taken pre-COVID in terms of sanitation? Because the lake is already under a lot of stress with respect to pollution load, most notably from Nambu River. So what are the sanitation measures taken? Because that may or may not increase the pollution load. So that is like the one question that I had. So yeah.
Salamji? Also, requesting if you have multiple questions, can you all condense it into one and ask, because there are a lot more questions, and if it'll be nice if it could be summarized and asked all at once. Salamji?
With respect to the with respect to Athapum fishing in Loktak, and that is it's being banned by the LDA under the Manipur Loktak Lake Protection Act of 2006. What I want to know is that even though the set activity is banned in the core area, it has not been said anything about being banned in the buffer area. So can we not utilize the buffer area to address the conflict question? So yeah, that are my questions. That's it.
Yeah, actually, what is happening now is before this Loktak Manipur Loktak Protection Act 2006 came in, entire lake was open to the community. Everyone had the right to access to the lake area for fishing. What happened before 1980 was that prior to the IPBES coming in, we had this seasonal migration of migratory fishes coming up from Chinuni Ravadi, and it came up through Loktak to Waitopad. Fishes came up to Manipur River. It came up to Nambu River, right up to Imphal city. And so main source of food, main source of earning money or livelihoods were all dependent largely on this fish resource coming in from upstream from Myanmar. But then suddenly, because of the IPBES, since 1983, this was cut off. And loss of this fish population has largely impacted upon a large population of people living in the Manipur, central Manipur Valley, not only in the Loktak Lake area. Loktak Lake, then there are a lot of wetlands on either sides of the Manipur River. Adjacent to Loktak, and on the eastern side of Manipur River, we have Kopat, Karungpat, Phumdis, Pat are all lakes. So all these lakes most of these lakes used to be the breeding ground of this migratory species. So when IPBES cut off this fish population, a large section of people in Manipur, central Manipur Valley were largely affected. But now, right at the moment, what is happening is that because of the loss of indigenous migratory fishes coming up, like I said, the government of Manipur has been trying to supplement on this fish population by bringing in fish species from outside, introducing all these carps and all. But in that question, on a technical point, we have been having a lot of discussion with Manipur government for the last 5 to 10 years. We are saying that in designing the IPBES, at that point of time, they didn't have this concept of fish ladder. So we are saying that if you provide fish ladder on the side of the IPBES, this fish population from Chinuni Ravadi will naturally come up upstream to Loktak and adjoining lakes, then Manipur River, then to Loktak to Nambu River and all. And so it will help in lessening the burden of this fishing community. But this point, Manipur government has not taken up for last 15 to 20 years. Then being part of the Manipur State Wetlands Authority, we have gone on field trying to locate on possible ways how to bring up this migratory fish species by bypassing Ithaibaras. And there's a river channel called Maramba Maril. This connects Manipur River with Phumdis Lake. Phumdis Lake is just adjoining Loktak. So we are persisting to the government of Manipur that if you rejuvenate this Maramba Maril channel, then migratory fish species will come up Manipur River and it will bypass Ithaibaras. It will go to this Phumdis Lake, and from Phumdis Lake they will go to Manipur River, and from Manipur River they will reach Loktak. The width of the margin between Manipur River and Phumdis Lake is just about 5 or 6 feet wide, and the margin of riverbank from the riverbank of Manipur River to Loktak Lake is just about 5-6 feet. So if you just provide some passageway, then this species will naturally come up, and if the species come up, then it solves much of the problem that we are having now. So Manipur government through the fishery department and through Loktak Development Authority, they have been trying to introduce this fingerling. In paper they say 1 lakh, 5 lakh, 10 lakh fingerling have been released. But what is happening right now in Loktak Lake is that people don't get this big fish in the middle of the lake. What we are catching now is all the small species, species and all. And this is not sufficient for the fishermen to earn their livelihood. So there's a lot of problems, and we are saying that instead of trying to introduce exotic fish species in the lake, why not go for this solution that we are coming up through this Maramba? If you rejuvenate this Maramba Maril channel, it will provide a natural passageway for the migratory fishes to come up to Loktak breeding ground. Then from there it spreads to Manipur River, to Nabul River, all the way up to Imphal. Then people will have some of the problems solved. But so far, technically, in our government meetings and all, this has not been taken up seriously by the government of Manipur. So, thank you.
Thank you, Salamji. So the next question I'm going to club because we are almost about to come towards the end. We've already reached the time limit, so I'm going to start quickly combining a couple of questions similarly themed. So one is, what are the specific climate impacts faced by the community, and how are the communities dealing with this impact? And the other similar question would be, is there increasing pressure on lake due to rising population or overfishing, non-traditional livelihood activities? And to what extent are communities involved by LDU in their lake development plan?
Yeah, question. But one issue that we have been facing for the last so many years, 10, 20 years, is that we are saying that Loktak Lake is aging, slowly dying. Why? Because it's basically we are talking about pollution. Lot of pollutants, the lot coming in from Imphal city, because this Nambul River, which is one of the main river flowing directly into Loktak Lake, it flows through Imphal city. And Imphal city stays about 9 to 10 kilometers. It's a highly polluted zone. You can say almost all the residents of people living in Imphal city dump their solid waste, whatever waste is there, chemicals, plastics, whatever is there, they all dump to the Nambul River. And this lot are carried directly to the Loktak Lake. So first problem is pollution to this random disposal of solid waste. And the second problem is siltation because particularly these hills in the western catchment, they almost in many parts it's almost barren. People just cut down the trees for zooming and for agro farming and all those things. And because of topsoil loss and all, heavy siltation occurs every year. Especially during the monsoon, there's a heavy siltation happening. The silt content is also very heavy. So because of the siltation, problem faced by Loktak now is that bed of the lake is becoming very shallow. Where in some parts of the lake where once the depth of the lake was 20 to 30 feet, now the depth is reduced to only about 5 to 6 feet. And last time when I was in this lake area, when I was going to the spotting village, I just dipped my hand into the water to reach the, I was trying to see if I could reach the bed. And I easily could reach the bed. That means the depth in some part is only just 3 or 4 feet. So when you compare a lot of pollutants coming in from Imphal city, then Moirang town, Nambol town, then you add in a lot of siltation happening. So these two components are the two main dangers we are facing now. And because of this, if you come down to Loktak, you see different colors of the water, from bluish to greenish to dark brown to pure black water. These are all coming from different sources. So now people are having problem of fetching water from the lake. In earlier days, say about 20 years back, I saw for myself that in many parts of the lake, there are portions of the lake where the water is very clear, and people fetch water from these areas for drinking purpose, after boiling and all, for drinking, for bathing and all those. But in the northern portion of the lake now, people can't hardly use the water. It's dark brown, blackish brown, and in some areas you see something like not oil, but it looks like oil slicks. So vegetation are getting rotten. I mean, it may be because of nutrient enrichment and all those things. There are a lot of problems happening, and we feel that because of this pollution load, and because of changing ecosystem, water becoming very bad and all, and because of this high level water maintained, it may be a reason why the less population of migratory water birds coming in every year. We see sometimes very less. Another year when the water is very little bit better, then we see more population of birds. But sometimes even in last year also we could not look at much of the spotting migratory water birds. So there are many problems happening right now, and but I could flag these two problems immediately: the pollution and siltation.
The next question is conservation of Sangai deer and of Lokpat used to be supported by so-called underground in Manipur. So what is the current situation?
I don't know who has put in that question. It's a tricky thing, but yes, in one way, because I was since 1996, I was associated with the Shanghai Protection Forum, an NGO which is based on the outskirts of Wetlands National Park. This forum is the collection of around 39 local clubs scattered all around the national park. And our main focus was on stopping the poaching that was happening very frequently. But then we saw that Forest Department Wildlife Section could not do much to stop this poaching. And this local club under the Shanghai Protection Forum, although they were doing very good work, they could not also stop the poaching. mainly because these poachers coming in, they are well armed. They had SLRs. They were armed with single barrel, double barrels. They were so we were unarmed, and these people are armed. So we had problems stopping these poachers. So we like what is happening in Loktak Lake. We organized a lot of series of awareness campaign and capacity building of local clubs and all around the periphery of the lake. Then since we cannot stop everything, we made an open appeal to anybody who can help us stop this, all this poaching and all. And at one point of time, not now anymore, but when this insurgency in Manipur was at its peak. Insurgency in Manipur started around 1980, and its peak was that time up to 1993, 1994. Then because of this floating biomass, check biomass in this national park area, some of the insurgent groups were taking shelter there. But I can say openly that some of those groups were actually they were also more or less they were also poachers. There were some cases where we found that underground cadres they had gone in and hunted sangai, hog deer, wild boar, and all. But then, fortunately for us, those who were campaigning for protection of sangai, one of the insurgent groups, these are belly-based groups, Métis groups, because protecting the environment, protecting the wildlife was also one of the agenda. They came in and they made a public proclamation. They said that anybody found hunting, killing sangai will be punished by them. And at one or two cases, I was called to Kabilamjong National Park, where it was informed that some poachers had been caught and arrested by these insurgent groups and all. And they were given punishment. And because of this intervention, although it was illegal, because of this intervention by this particular insurgent group, suddenly we found that there was a sharp drop in the poaching cases. Because one or two of the poachers were shot on their legs and all, it served as a warning to anybody coming in and killing sangai and all. So after that particular incident, I think it happened in 1996. So after the particular incident, in the following years, we didn't heard much of poaching. Some rare one or two cases, but not as frequently or in large number as earlier. So although this intervention from the government point is unauthorized and illegal and all, we felt that since Forest Department could not do anything and civil society organization cannot do anything, intervention of this particular group except the sangai. So we said just thank you. It's something like that. Thank you for your intervention.
The next question, I'll stop with two questions and maybe Salamji, if you can type your email ID because time is also running out. So I'll have two questions and with that we'll end this webinar. So the two questions are, the first one is there any religious and cultural belief and practices that contribute to the conservation of the areas? And the second one is there any component of ecotourism with the local communities?
Yeah, on this last point, ecotourism, we have been talking among ourselves and we have been talking to the government also. Especially in the last meeting, I talked personally to this Director Tourism that instead of coming up ideas of resorts and building hotels in the lake area, why not go in a form of tourism that merges with the ecosystem of the lake, that doesn't disturb the ecosystem of the lake? Ecotourism in a form that it's part of the lake ecosystem. Like we have the floating huts. So why not do something like that? Uh, encourage homestays in the floating huts. Hut constructed with bamboo and pets, not huts constructed with all those modern materials. But right now, what is happening is government of Manipur is coming up with this tourism concept in Loktak. But our suggestions are nowhere in the discussion. The concept of the government talking about tourism in Manipur is they want to build resorts, big time resorts, 3-star hotel, 5-star hotel. Recently, they were talking about bringing in imported sand from Dimapur. We have this reddish brown sand used for construction of houses. So I heard that in their meeting they were talking about bringing in imported sand from Dimapur, all the way from Dimapur, and build up artificial islands in the periphery of the lake. So my counter question was, why go in for this idea, which is not only going to disturb the ecosystem of the lake, but which is not part of the lake's traditional system? Why go for that artificial island? Instead, why not promote this floating biomass, floating huts on the biomass? So people from outside Manipur, people from Delhi, Bombay, people from Europe, they come to Loktak particularly to see this floating biomass, floating huts on the biomass, then women on this traditional dugout canoe fishing and all. So we are saying that people don't come here to stay in 3-star hotels, resorts and all. So at the moment we are having sort of conflict on the idea of tourism, ecotourism or whatever tourism. What the government is coming up and what we are trying to say is totally different, and we are having conflict on interest on that. Our concept of tourism is which blend into the ecosystem of the lake, which doesn't disturb the ecosystem of the lake, the scenic beauty of the lake. In the last meeting, just about a week back, I heard that there was a meeting convened by the Chief Secretary, the newly appointed Chief Secretary, and there was a proposal that all the floating biomass from the lake will be cleared. 10%, 100%, all the floating biomass will be cleared off, and they will build artificial floating restaurant, floating homestay. So I countered that argument. What is the sense? People come to see the floating biomass. How do people live in floating huts? How they do traditional fishing and all? And you are talking of clearing everything, finishing of that all, and you want to construct artificial hotels, artificial restaurants, floating restaurants. So the conflict is there, and we don't agree with what the government proposes.
Thank you, Salamji, for giving all your time, and I hope people
Hello.
were able to. Yes.
Yeah, I just saw one small question about: is there any government school in the lake area?
Yes, if you
Somebody
want to respond to
that. Inside the lake area, within the lake area, there is no government school. So what happened was, after the government started evicting the fishing community, fishing people, they lost much of their resource. When I saw the earlier slide, how they were doing fish in that circular pond. So when the government started destroying these circular ponds and trying to stop this, their main source of livelihood was cut, and their earning capability went down like that, deep down. So fishing family, they suddenly felt that they could no longer send their children to school. So families started taking out their children from boarding schools and all that. And many of the school children, we found that many of the school children suddenly become dropouts. Children studying from KG to class 1 to class 8. So around 2016-17, we started a small school inside the lake, a floating elementary school. This was an informal school, especially particularly for dropout children. And we requested the education department and director of education school and the zonal office in Bishnupur district that please adopt this dropout children where we are trying to give them some informal education. You please adopt them in government school. But that has not happened so far. So we have got around 30-40 dropout children that we are trying to give some form of informal education in that floating village. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Salamji, for your time, and that was a lovely, lovely presentation and sharing of experience of what is happening in Loktak. And thank you all those who stuck around until we pass the time limit. We would love to see you again in 2 weeks, Tuesday. And we will share the recording of this link and which will be uploaded on YouTube. And thank you, Poonima Tai and Maniji, for sharing around wetlands. For anything, requesting all of you to send us an email at icca.southasia@gmail.com. If there are questions that you still want to ask Salamji, you can also write to this email ID or Salamji's email ID, which is there in the link that was shared in the mail. And Salamji is also shared right now in the chat box. So please feel free to write to Salamji and take it as I really apologize if somebody's questions was missed, and hope you've had a wonderful time and hope to see you all soon. Thank you so much.